Welcome to Tourism Talk. I'm Laura Oswald, Director of Marketing at the Paducah Convention and Visitors Bureau. Today, I'm on location at the National Quilt Museum, a Paducah attraction that honors today's quilters. Join me as we go inside and behind the museum's Paducah Signature Experience. Here in the National Quilt Museum Gallery, I'm joined by Becky Glasby, Education Director. Becky, so excited that you're here with us today. Thank you.
Yeah.
So before we get into the experience, which you've been so instrumental in developing and offering here at the museum, this is the Year of Kentucky Storytellers, as you know, and you are one of those local storytellers keeping our cultural heritage alive. So what is your Paducah story?
Well, I'm not originally from Paducah. I have a background in museums, historic preservation, and was looking for different jobs and different opportunities when I found the job ad here, which is education, so dealing with tours and student programs, scout programs, all things that I had experience with from, prior jobs and just past experience. And I was also a quilter, so it was really kind of exciting to bring that interest and that hobby into my career now, and to be able to talk quilts to everybody who comes through and to be able to pass that on and inspire the next generation of quilter in everything that we do here at the museum.
Absolutely, and you are so good at that, and the experience is a perfect example of how you've put that passion into something that is affecting our visitors. So I guess before we really dive deep into that, as a quilter, for those of our viewers who've not been to the museum yet, how do you share what the museum is all about and why someone should come visit?
The museum is, well, we like to say it's a contemporary art museum. Our collection is contemporary, so we are collecting quilts as early as 1980, moving up through today. And so it's a great way to experience a different type of art. This textile fiber art form is something a lot of people don't really think about when they get together. But as soon as they find out that I work at the Quilt Museum, or I'm talking to people when they come in, visitors, things like that, they start telling us about the quilts they have at home, or quilts that someone made for them, experiences they've had with that, or for their kids, things like that. And so it really turns out that quilts are something that everybody has an experience with. They have either a memory or an idea or even just that tactile experience already. And so coming to the museum is a great way to showcase that art form. And it's a great way for people who've never had that experience or really don't have much in the way of quilting in their own families, their own history, to really get to experience it up close and to really dive into all of those styles and aspects and details that can be achieved through fiber art. So
Absolutely.
It's a great place for that.
Very well said. And we welcome so many people into our visitors center that are not quilters. And when we say we're home of the National Quilt Museum, it's just a block away, they say, oh, my grandmother quilted, or my mom quilts, or I know a quilter.
Yes.
And so it seems that connection is very deep, but then you all just take it to another level and change perceptions about what the art of quilting is here in this space.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So the experience, obviously, is a great way to do that, a way to dive a little bit deeper, as all the signature experiences do. And you were really there at the beginning of the process. So tell us about what it was like to have the opportunity to develop an elevated experience of the museum and quilting.
It was a lot of fun trying to figure out how to wrap that all together, into this experience, into a new program. We gear it for adult groups, so kind of a different venue for what I normally do with our school tours and, youth programming. So that was a really fun challenge to bring that to a point where any adult could do it, whether they have experience stitching or not, or it's been a really long time maybe since they've ever tried it before. And so we found a way to incorporate, bringing in the tour and making the tour experience part of our program a little more detailed, and to bring in the hands-on portion, which a lot of people are surprised by when they come for the experience, that they actually get to get their hands into it and actually stitch things together themselves, which is very exciting.
Yes, and you mentioned the first part of the tour and experience that you can just do in itself is sort of that white glove tour, that VIP tour. What does that look like, walking through this space?
Yeah, it's something we wanted to incorporate more than just our daily tours. Give them a little more information, a little more background, and a little more, hands-on, a little more deep dive into what we have here at the museum to really make it a special, that VIP experience to come together. So we have a cart that we load up with a lot of different materials, tools, rotary cutters, rulers, needles and thread that they can actually try hand stitching themselves, in different embroidery hoops. We have fabric paints, we have the crystals that get set into embellished quilts, all of those little details. So when we're walking through our exhibits, walking through our quilts, we can stop and talk about the quilt itself, maybe something that the designer has told us about the backstory or color choice or technique, and then actually bring out those tools and those objects that people can touch. They can really look at up close and see, oh wow, that's how they did that, especially for those non-quilt people and those groups to come through, that they really get that sense of this is how it was put together and this is how it was created from start to finish. So we like to give them a lot of that background information, and then also, again, those hands-on pieces, and pull them out and show them this is what they're using.
Yes.
And this is what you can use if you are working with art or in fiber, making your own quilts to come together.
Awesome. And you do a great job through that process of calling out some very different elements, different styles of quilt, different techniques. I think about those crystals being a really neat hands-on opportunity, and this quilt behind us has those incorporated into it. And so you see how all the time and vision that it takes to be a quilter.
Absolutely. It's one of our number one questions is how long it takes to make a quilt. So when we're able to pull out those tools, we're able to pull out, applique pieces versus embellishments versus fabric paints and different types of threads, the metallics and variegated threads people are incorporating. It really, I think, brings it home to our visitors and the tours. This is how they do it, and this is how many pieces and how many tools and materials they actually need to complete it. And when we tell you it takes this long to do, this one small portion, they can look at that and kind of feel that in their hands, and then look at the quilts and realize, oh my goodness, they put so much time and effort into this work, and really get that understanding and appreciation of the artwork.
Right. So even really with that VIP tour, I feel like you come away with an appreciation for the art form, but to be able to take that inspiration to the classroom then takes it to a totally new level. Tell us about what that is like, going from here on into the classroom for the next phase.
Every group is different, of course, because they all have different questions or experiences, but it is pretty uniform across the board when we get back from the tour. We get people really excited about the creativity and what they've seen here in the galleries, and then we bring them into the classrooms, and we have all of our sewing machines set up. We have all of the fabrics laid out, all the tools, materials, everything that they're going to need. And a lot of times people come in and they stop and they go, oh, we're going to be sewing. Like, they don't even realize this next part of what's coming together. And so that's really fun for me, knowing that this is what's coming and kind of seeing that group reaction, and sometimes the hesitation in the groups and the people going, oh, I can't do this. I'm not creative. I'm not, artistic. And we, gently cajole them into sitting down and getting their hands into it. And I think that really does elevate it. It brings it to that next portion of they've learned about it, but now they have to do it. And so a lot of people learn by doing. And so it's giving them that chance to be creative, even if they don't think they are, or that they're not artistic, if it's not something that they do, whether it's fabric or paint or, other type of art form. And then once you get past that, they get really excited about it. We have groups of all kinds, and they sit there and they're turning their pieces, figuring out what goes together, what colors match, what things they like or don't like, or how they want to go crazy with their design. And so we allow them to express that. We have, set guidelines of the type of block we're looking for based off of a 9-patch, but they get to make their own variation of that. And so everybody's block ends up being different, and they all put their own personality into their fabrics, into their pieces. And once they get stitching on the machine, people pick it up pretty quick. We try to keep it simple so that they're learning the same basics that the artists that they've just looked at all of these quilts had to learn those same basics. So it really ties them into that story and the part of being a quilter and being a quilt maker. And by the end, even the people who are like, oh no, I'm never gonna do this, I'm not artistic, I can't put this down, they're they're holding up their finished piece and they're all
Right.
like, look what I made, and they're really excited, and they're sending pictures of it to their friends and family. I mean, they're already really excited, and just, I think, realizing something about themselves that they can create and they can
Right.
put all of that together, which is really fun to see every time we have groups come
Absolutely.
in.
And I think that you mentioned holding it up and taking those photos. You all make it so fun and so shareable, which is a key
Yes.
element of an experience. You want it to be shareable and memorable, and you all make it, package it in such a way. Tell us about what that finished product looks like.
So they put together their variation of the 9-patch. They get to choose all of their designs and the fabric shapes that we've started with. And they put the top together of their quilt. We actually give them some batting fabric, and they kind of make their own little quilt sandwich. So they're actually putting quilt stitches through it, so they really get that full sense of a quilt start to finish. And then to keep it a little bit easier, and time-wise, of course, we're putting them into a frame. And so that frame really kind of makes their piece look really nice. So it's not just, oh, here's a beginner block, what am I gonna do with this? They're going home with a finished souvenir. It's labeled with the Quilt Museum. We get people to sign their work, and sometimes they get the rest of the group to sign their frames. It's something that they put together, and then it's ready for them to take pictures of course, to show off, to put it at their desk, put it up in their office, put it at home, ready to be seen and kind of put it out there that, yeah, hey, I tried this experience. I went to a different place, and this is what we made, and they can really talk knowledgeably about their experience and about the quilts and what they've learned, and really kind of share that with other people. So their friends who quilt, get excited. Their friends who don't know how to quilt are like, you made this?
Right.
And what is it? And how did you do it? And they can really talk about that. So it's something important, I think, for us to educate people about the quilts through the tour and the materials, but also make it fun and give them that chance to really try it out, because art, you have to do it
Absolutely.
to do it. So we want them to create it and get excited and inspired by what they're seeing and how they're incorporating that into their own pieces.
I think that for us at the Visitors Bureau, that was one of the things that we wanted most for, we know the power of word of mouth and convincing friends, family, where to travel or what they need to experience or know about. And so this new awareness of quilting, this new awareness of Paducah and what our culture is here, I think that you are being a storyteller, but turning these people into storytellers for the museum and for Paducah as well. So that is powerful.
It is, yeah.
And you work with so many different types of groups. I think of the ability for this to be a team building activity for a meeting group, or just something for a group of friends to do, or a group tour coming through, and this being part of their larger experience. What are some of those kind of parameters for a group? Are there any limits on the size of group or an ideal size that you would recommend?
Yeah, we try to tailor it so we can accommodate a lot of group styles and different types. I'd say probably our ideal size is from 10 to about 25 or so, just because of our space. But that being said, we've had bus groups come in where they've got 40, 50 people.
Right.
So we're able to split them up and really kind of give them a really good taste of Paducah by bringing half the group through and then switching them out and giving them a chance to experience other things in the area and explore what all we have to offer here in town. But we've got groups from, families coming through, or, grad student type, research about quilt making and kind of the girls' trip, out while they're coming for, for a fun trip over to this end of the state or to Paducah itself. We've had car clubs, so husband and wives, coming together, which has been really fun because we get both of them to make their own quilt blocks. Sometimes they work together, and so that's a really great experience for them to share as a couple. We just kind of get general tour groups that come through, groups of friends, garden clubs, study groups, ladies groups, work meetings. If they want that team building, we can pair them up and allow them to work together to make a quilt block, which is a whole different type of experience for them to realize this is all the work that goes into it. And making all of those creative decisions together as a team can be really helpful for professional groups as well. So we gear it mostly for adults so that it's a different offering, and it's a little more detailed orientated in terms of the stories and the quilts, but it's always a lot of fun to come through.
And all of those groups you talk about, I think about the value that this could offer, to a professional group, thinking about the creativity being such a vital skill, and this kind of gets you into that part of your brain and tapping into that creative energy and spirit. I think that is very valuable for a professional style group, but obviously there's a lot of merit for this as a leisure activity as well. So I hope our locals that are watching will think about any groups they're involved in, or a family reunion, a garden club. There are so many opportunities to get in, and of course you can find more information on the National Quilt Museum website and on the Paducah.travel website as well. We've been promoting that Paducah.travel/groups for the full listing of the experiences and some insight on that flip-flop pairing ability that can be very helpful to extend the experience as well.
Yeah, it gives them a good taste, well-rounding of everything Paducah has to offer between history and culture and arts. That's really what we're about here. And so being able to experience several of them together is a great way to, really dive in, especially for locals who may not have been here in a while, maybe ever. We get some of those that come through and they're like, oh, it's something different. It gives them a little more than just coming in and casually wandering around. So we really look forward to those groups.
That's awesome. Well, I certainly encourage locals to do that, but I will say you all are open most every day year-round, 7 days a week, April to November, and then 6 days a week the rest of the year. So quiltmuseum.org, follow along, see what exhibits are coming up. Being a quilter, I'm sure you have an interesting, maybe even a giddiness about some of the exhibits that come through. What do you look most forward to, or what would you encourage people to really look for when they're planning their visit?
Well, we do change our exhibits pretty regularly, so there's always something new coming through. So if it's been a while since people have been through it, they think, oh, we've been here to see that. We do change out the exhibits, but then also our own collection. We are over 630 some quilts at this point. And so we're always changing what's in our own collection on exhibit. And so that's really fun because people come in and go, oh, this is something I haven't seen before, or it's been a long time since I've seen this one, or we've got brand new pieces that come through. And those go out and they go, I've never noticed that. And we go, well, that's because it's new. So there's always a different feel when we have our groups come through because of our traveling exhibits and the way that we rotate. So on our end, that in-house, it really makes it exciting because we're not just doing the same tour, every time. That we might be talking similar techniques or details, but depending on what's out allows us to pull out different things off of the cart, for our styles and pieces and all those tools. So that keeps it fresh for us, and it keeps us looking at the quilts in a different way. So it's really fun to get those groups who've come back or have visited before because they really do get a different feel for the museum and that experience as a whole.
Absolutely. You mentioned, new quilts continuing to come in, and there may be a misperception that quilting is an ancient, traditional art form, and there are traditional quilts, but you all really are focused on today's quilter.
Yes.
And that quilter continues to evolve. So that has to be exciting to see the new quilts, the new techniques, the new styles roll in.
Yeah, it's a lot of quilting, we're basing on that same tradition, but the ways that you can do that nowadays, the tools, the materials, the fabric choices, I mean, there's so many options and so much variety for people to work from that, things that you see here are not going to necessarily be what you see anywhere else. A lot of them are those unique designs and interpretations from the artist, which was a big part of creating the program so that the groups that come through can create their own piece and have that sense of this one's mine and I chose to do it this way for whatever reason. It's not just a copy of something else. So they're getting to kind of build on that. And it's fun for us to see where quilting, is expanding to, not just here in Paducah and here at the Quilt Museum, but we're getting, collection pieces from all around the world. And to see new countries and new artists kind of popping up or, new traditions maybe of quilting in other countries to be kind of recognized and showcasing those different viewpoints is also a really great way to experience just the art form of quilting as a whole.
Yeah, that's awesome. And the experience certainly is an amazing way to do that. But I will say that you referenced your connection with children's and youth education. Yes. Tell us about what those programs look like here at the museum.
We do a lot of adapting depending on group size or subject matter. You know, we get school tours regularly throughout the year. Those are always a lot of fun because they get to come in and experience maybe a museum for the first time and maybe quilting in a museum for the first time. And then we usually have some hands-on programs. So again, they get that tactile feel of fabric in some shape or form to come together. We get scout troops, so they're working maybe something that's geared a little more toward their badge work or what their details are supposed to be, so we kind of can tailor programs to that. With the homeschool families and networks in the area, we're able to kind of tailor some programs into ages and skill levels, that kind of group size detail. But I always try to get some sort of a hands-on, you know, that we can with the groups, whether we're going off-site or here in-house to programs, you know, our youth camps, our youth programs, to really, again, give them that creativity, to give them that ownership of a piece, and to allow them to be creative. You know, we usually give them the guidelines, here's kind of what we're aiming for, but if they want to go, you know, kind of off book or out of the box with it, you know, it's art. There's really not a wrong way to put it together, and we want to encourage that in the children that are coming through and in our youth programming, in our adult programming, to really allow people to realize this is a way to express yourself, and that's what the quilters are doing with our exhibits and our collection pieces. You know, it's a way to express any sort of idea or opinion or feeling, and you know, we really like to pass that on, you know, through our youth programs and get them excited about art and thinking about fabric, maybe thinking about their own experiences and how could they represent that in some sort of an art form. So whether they become quilters, you know, down the road, that would be great. We know some of them who have, you know, over the years, but even if not, it becomes part of their story. You know, it becomes part of that sense when they are older and they go somewhere and say, oh, there's a quilt exhibit. And then they bring out that story of, you know, I've done that before, or I made a quilt, or I've had a quilt made for me, or I've lived somewhere that this was part of it. You know, it's kind of woven into, you know, their own storylines and brought together. So, you know, it really does, you know, spread throughout their lives and throughout, you know, their experiences, and ties them to a lot of people, you know, all around the world who are experiencing those same things and that same creativity.
Experience is such a big word, kind of a buzzword in the travel industry right now, and I know it is in the museum world as well. You talk about, you try to get those hands-on as much as possible. What do you see as the value of experience? You know, I think you referenced that in a sense there, but what is the value of that?
I mean, you can go to a museum and you can take a tour, you can just kind of casually walk around, read the labels, look at things, you know, take pictures of things as you go through. But when you're able to kind of bump it up a level, whether it's, you know, a really good, you know, our signature experience tour, you know, something like that, whether it's then getting in that hands-on, that you really get to fully drop into that art form, that experience, you know, that creativity, whatever it is. And it really helps you, like I said, some people learn by doing, but it also, I think, gives people a better understanding of what it takes to go into it. And so they can come away with maybe a new interest and kind of, oh, you know, I could do this. You know, I would like to learn more about it. Maybe it's something they never learned or had experience with before. You know, it was never taught to them, you know, something that they never thought would be interesting. And then they realize by getting their hands into it that, you know, yeah, this is really fun. It allows them to tap into their own, you know, artistic expression, which some people just don't think they have until you give them that freedom to sit down and to create, which we see with our groups. And, you know, they turn out really great things and they're like, oh man, I never thought I could do this. And it really helps, I think, just open people up to different ideas and different subjects and learning experiences. So it really does give them that full immersion, you know, into that detail. And, you know, bringing those hands on really gives them, I think, something special, you know, that comes through more than just, okay, I visited there, I went there, you know, you're going to talk about the things that you did, or that you really we got to, you know, swim with dolphins, we got to touch this thing, or we got to make our own quilt block and stitch it together. You know, they're going to talk about that and kind of be really excited about it for weeks, you know, afterwards. So that's a great way to really bring people not just to Paducah as a whole, but also just in their own, you know, their own stories and bringing that together.
That's awesome. And speaking of bringing people to Paducah, the museum brings quilters to Paducah as well, year-round. You know, we see those quilt quilters, fiber artists, people that are interested in making that sort of pilgrimage to Paducah. As a quilter, what are some of the other local experiences that you recommend? You know, if a quilter is coming here for the first time to experience the museum, what else do you think they should make sure to see and do?
There's so many things, to go through, but a lot of times, we're always talking about the Lower Town Arts District, and you get them, experiencing those other artists and other forms, because art inspires art. And so whether they're quilters or, other forms, that they're looking at what other people are doing and how can they use that in their own styles, or, sparking ideas and innovations, that come through. So that's a big part of it. And then, just with the other experiences, they want to get to know about Paducah. So Hotel Metropolitan is a great one of history that most people don't know about. So we try to encourage that. It's a great way to tag team, those larger groups, to swap between them, and really just getting out and about, popping around downtown and seeing the flood walls and seeing, just all the different shops and details that we're trying to encourage them to, do a little more than just the quilt side of Paducah, to really experience that full culture that we have here in town.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate your role in that, and the whole team here at the museum for all you do to celebrate quilting and celebrate Paducah's culture and heritage, all of that. So thank you, Becky, for joining us today and going behind the experience for us.
Sure thing. Thanks for having us.
Yes, you're welcome. And thank you for joining us today. Be sure to visit paducah.travel/groups for a full rundown on the National Quilt Museum Signature Experience and all of the signature experiences available to groups here in Paducah. Thank you for watching Tourism Talk. We'll see you next time. Go.